In the past, Canada was renowned as a modern utopia, but that seems to be fading away. Many Canadians are unhappy and feel deeply pessimistic about the economic situation and their quality of life. Several challenges are threatening its economic stability and social cohesion. Even with the country's stature of prosperity and inclusivity, it's struggling with a host of issues.
Quit mandating stuff. The government is overreaching.
More Canadians need to wake up and realize that our freedoms are being stripped away.
Statistics show a steadily rising income inequality. The top 1% of earners have captured a large portion of the total income over the past decades. Concerns about the environment are also rising in Canada. In 2023, 90% of weather and wildfire hazard alerts were released. Apart from the wildfires, 2023 was the warmest year in Canada in a record 125,000 years. As Canada navigates these complex challenges, its once idolized image as a utopian society is giving way to a more uncertain and troubled reality. Over the past decade, there has been a discernible trend of decreasing life satisfaction among Canadians. Studies show that more than half of Canadians are angry about how their country is governed. 2/3 of Canadians believe that Canada is deeply broken and wary about the economy and their inability to meet their daily needs. Most Canadians are dissatisfied with their own country and feel that their lives were much better before and that services in Canada have significantly worsened. For starters, the housing crisis in Canada has reached alarming proportions in recent years, impacting the affordability and accessibility of housing for many Canadians. In 2023, housing costs in Canada surged significantly. The average home price in Canada is 141% higher than what a Canadian household earning the median income can afford. Reports suggest that a Canadian family earning the median household income of $79,876 can reasonably afford a $315,000 home with a maximum insured mortgage of $299,500. However, the average home price in Canada is currently $757,600, which is much more expensive than what the average household can afford. Furthermore, finding decent housing became an uphill task the same year, with data showing that there has been a 2% reduction in the general housing stock. As though that was not enough, rental costs hit the roof between 2022 and 2023, with the average rent for a 2-bedroom apartment growing by 8% to hit $1,359 in 2023. This was a 5.6% average rent surge from 2022. With this trend, low and moderate income households can hardly afford housing, increasing rental stress and housing insecurity. Worth mentioning is that nearly half, or 44% of Canadians, were either homeless or unable to afford decent housing or rent. This was due to a lack of financial capability. So, why is there a housing crisis in Canada? Well, there's a big demand for housing because Canada has a rapidly growing population due to taking in 500,000 immigrants each year. So it simply needs more homes, but a growing population wouldn't have to be an issue. The real problem is that Canada is completely failing at building enough homes to house all these new people. Like in many other countries, housing policy in Canada is controlled by local city governments, and they are hesitant to allow the construction of more houses because it would decrease the prices of existing properties. Having fewer houses means the prices of these properties keep rising, which is great for homeowners. Homeowners are also potential voters and therefore very important to local politicians. Local politicians do not address this problem to avoid upsetting their current voters, even though it makes housing unaffordable for everyone else. A few economists and the government believe that increased home prices and a lack of new housing supply have escalated the housing crisis in the country. They argue that restrictive municipal policies hinder builders from efficiently delivering new homes due to the mentioned reason. Apart from the housing crisis, Canada is grappling with a monopolistic and oligopolistic economy, which has significantly pushed the cost of living for Canadians. In other words, most Canadian industries are dominated by just one or a few gigantic companies, and this is no coincidence, but the result of a dubious strategy pursued by many different Canadian governments. While governments in most countries try to prevent companies from becoming too large, Canadian governments generally try to achieve exactly that, resulting in the Canadian economy being dominated by just a handful of gigantic companies with little to no competition. Monopolies are not good for anyone except themselves, because without competition, they generally tend to raise prices just because they can. That's exactly what you're seeing now. Grocery prices have hit the ceiling, meaning Canadians have to dig deeper into their pockets to afford food. Statistics revealed that Canadian families paid $1,065 more for food items in 2023 monthly. What about telecommunication costs? In June 2023, Canadians received a relief, paying up to 15% less for telecom services than they paid in June the previous year. The drop was due to a drop in promotional pricing and lower cellular plan prices. Canadians also enjoyed a 3.2% internet services drop in 2023. Unfortunately, this drop did nothing to reduce the burden of the high cost of living in the country. Banking fees remained one of the core challenges for Canadian residents, especially because Canada's banking sector is dominated by a handful of major banks, resulting in high fees for banking services. Of course, Canadians were not happy to be paying more fees in 2023 than they did in 2022. But the high fees aside, the dissatisfaction with banks mainly emanated from the inability of banks to help them avoid fees altogether. In general, Canada's monopolistic and oligopolistic economy has caused higher costs of living for its residents in different sectors. Addressing these concentrations of power and lack of competition in key industries helps mitigate the economic burden on Canadian households. It also improves affordability and accessibility for consumers. Another of Canadian residents' worries is income inequality, which may occur due to various factors. For example, a persistent drop in real estate values, high inflation, and unsteady financial markets. In 2022, a significant number of households experienced wealth reduction. In Q4 of 2022, the median household net worth dropped by 6.4%. While Canada has a reputation for high quality and broadly accessible public services, like the universal healthcare system, many Canadians are unhappy because they lack access to high quality healthcare. Oftentimes, they have to grapple with the lack of professional specialists and wait long for medical procedures to be performed. A survey conducted in 2022 revealed that 63% of Canadians cited staff unavailability as the core problem in the national healthcare system. But there is more. Persistent unemployment and job insecurity is another problem that's causing dissatisfaction among Canadians. In December 2023, the unemployment rate in Canada stood at 5.8%. with the economy adding a mere 100 jobs. In the same year, more Canadians in technical, scientific, and professional services were unemployed. This was regardless of the fact that the total number of jobs grew by 46,000, 16,000 of which were in the social assistance and healthcare sectors. While Canada technically has a labor shortage, there is mainly demand for the lowest paid and lowest skilled jobs. As unemployment in Canada increases, life becomes harder and more challenging for the middle class, with more and more residents worrying about their mental health. In 2022, the number of people suffering from anxiety and mood disorders in Canada was quite high. While more people reported stable mental health in 2023, symptoms of anxiety, post-traumatic stress, and depression didn't change. Besides unemployment, social and political polarization can also cause mental health disorders. More Canadians now believe that the country is more polarized, and the leadership, mass media, and political institutions don't make things any better. Canadians believe these groups have failed to mediate the growing differences in the society, worsening the situation. In essence, the idealized image of Canada as a contemporary utopia is rapidly falling apart upon closer inspection. Given the escalating housing crisis, skyrocketing cost of living, social and health-related factors, and several other issues, it is not surprising that fewer Canadians have been satisfied with life in recent years. Unless Canada urgently addresses these problems, the once idyllic image of the country will increasingly diverge from reality.